So, if you think nurses are some renegade Victoria's Secret models roaming the hospital offering sponge baths all day, listen up. Welcome, folks, to The Dim Nurse with me, your host, Blue. Ladies and gentlemen, time is the greatest asset that we all have, and thank you for giving me some of yours as we get into episode number 1. For those of you just joining us, we are the comedic survival guide for all things nursing, for those newbies, those wannabes, and those has-beens. Today we're talking about why do you want to be in nursing? I don't know. Why do you want to be in nursing? There's 100 million reasons. A lot of them are fake, let's be honest. A lot of them are insincere, let's be honest. So we're going to kind of gloss over the why question. You can answer that for yourself. I definitely can't answer it for you. But I'll tell you a couple of reasons why that I hear most common. Number 1, I lost my job and I need a new one. Okay, great. You need a new one. You know that there is a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of energy that you got to put into being a nurse. We'll talk about that a little bit later in another episode, like episode number 2. But yeah, if all you need is another job and you have no other stake in nursing and you just want to be sure that when you wake up one day, your job didn't vanish again, let's turn you in a different direction. You should look elsewhere. In that same vein, if you were told by some moronic job counselor or some rando at the unemployment office that, hey, you should be a nurse because they always need some nurses and you'll never be out of a job and they make all this good money. Yeah, that's also one of the dumbest things I've heard in a long time. One of the dumbest things I've heard recently. Let's say that. Forget that. You have to actually have some other motivation to being a nurse, or you're wasting your time and everybody else's time, and certainly the health and well-being of your future patients. Number 2 that I hear all the time, kind of like number 1, I want to make that money. Those nurses make so much money, give me a piece. You crazy. Nurses do not make that much money. There are plenty of careers that pay more. Oh yeah, there are some that pay less. Plenty of careers that play more. Yeah, there's a lot of companies and careers that play more. Just look at Google. You can come to work in your pajamas, and they got all sorts of little activities in there. And
showing pictures that match.
Yeah, if you heard that right there, that was Google showing me some pictures of pajamas. You gotta love technology, but it brings me to a good point, just so you know. This podcast is not edited in any way for 2 good reasons. Number 1, I don't know how, and I really don't have the time to learn how. So you get the number 1 version, the only version, the unadulterated version. And number 2, which I'll claim as the primary reason, is because if you're not edited, you have a little bit more authenticity, I think, and you have a little bit more accountability, I think. Because how often can you say something in real life and just say, oh, edit that out? Never. So this is what you get. So you'll hear Google trying to find me some pajama pictures in the background for no apparent reason, other than I said they were a fun company, rumor has it, to work for. Moving right along. So yeah, there are other companies out there that do allow you to play a lot more, but they also pay you a lot more. And sure, there are absolutely places and jobs where you get paid less, but if your sole purpose is to go into nursing to make that money, you really don't have a high enough bar for money making. You better reprioritize some of your goals. And the most common reason, clocking in at number 3, but really probably number 1, is, I want to capture that Grey's Anatomy business. I've never actually watched Grey's Anatomy, only heard constant chatter about it. It's the nurses having sex with the doctors having sex with the doctors having sex with each other, and the nurses having sex with each other in all sorts of random corners of the hospital, amongst all these really beautiful people. They're all very beautiful people. And so some people want to get into nursing because they think, let me have a piece of that. All right, well, Let me just give you a little insight into that. The field of nursing is not saturated with the world's top 15, even 20% of the most beautiful people. Let's examine that for a tiny bit. If you are in the top even 20% of the world's most beautiful people, the world, THE world. So not 10 blocks from your home, you're the best looking, or in your city, you're the hottest, or in the state, you've won some competition. In the world, full stop, you're in that category, and you're in nursing? What happened? Something happened there. And that is a good story that I want to hear. Because if you are in that class of pretty people and somehow you fell through the cracks and you're in the trenches with us, working, doing some manual labor as a nurse in the small hours of the day or night, something happened. Because if you are that category, chances are good that you're already on Grey's Anatomy pretending to be a nurse or a doctor, or you're trying to be on Grey's Anatomy pretending to be a nurse or a doctor, or you are a model, or you're trying to be a model, or you found yourself a sugar mama or a sugar daddy. Either way, you aren't in nursing. If you fell through those cracks because, I don't know, you don't own a mirror, or your friends didn't say, hey, you're really hot, how come you don't use that? You should leave your job immediately and go cash in on all those good looks before the beer, the pizza, and the chips, and all the wonderful desserts in the world find you, and that's no longer an option. So cash in, get that money for 5, 6, 10, 15 years, however long you can do it. Because you know what? Hospitals are going to be around. The field of nursing is going to be around. But maybe your extreme hotness isn't always going to be around. So do that. If you really still want to be a nurse, because you do, come on back. Then I think that's okay. But just for the rest of you out there, this was entirely meant to burst your bubble and shock you back into reality. Don't get it twisted, folks. No one's calling me up tomorrow either to be on any of these shows or model for jack shit. So we all have to be okay with our skills and our talents, whatever they are or aren't, and move on. All right. Let me educate you on what the life is like as a nurse, which will also kind of help put into a good, clear picture for you why the Grey's Anatomy scene isn't really what's going on. So you've got your 12 hours. Most of you are heading for the 12-hour joy that is the shift work from either 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I know those of you are going to be out there saying, oh, yeah, well, I work a shift that's, something other than that. It's actually 6:57 p.m. to 6:57 a.m. All right, fine. Whatever 12-hour increment you work, the long and the skinny of it is you work typically a 12-hour period of time, either during mostly daytime hours or mostly nighttime hours. And what that means is you got a bunch of folk in scrubs, which I'll admit there's a new brand that may be a little bit better. I think they're Figs or something. Figs apparently is this new so-called designer brand scrubs that makes everybody look wonderful. That aside, you're in scrubs which are in no way flattering, okay? You've got some kind of surgical cap, hat, whatever on your head, or you've got your hair, if it's a bit longer, tied up in some loose, crooked knot, and then you've got your hands that got these crevices what's that canyon? The Grand Canyon, because we use this industrial soap 7,000 times a day that can melt steel. So you got that going on for you. And because we haven't slept in about 100 years, especially if you're on nights, you've got these deep, dark circles under your eyes like you've been punched in the head or you're closely related to a raccoon. So it's not the most appealing environment. You're not looking your best to do a little ad-lib Grey's Anatomy scenario. So that's as number one. The environment of the nurse is exactly this. You go through your 11 and a half hours and you just see that light that says, I can leave, at the end of the tunnel, shining away. And at 11 and a half hours, that's when some kind of drama happens. You're like, oh, my patient's dead, or, oh, somebody else's patient's dead, or, oh, the hospital's burning down, or, oh, the hospital sprung a leak. And so you can't be like, well, isn't like 11 and a half hours, like 95% success? Like my patient's been good and everything's been chill for 95% of the day. Can't I just get the fuck out of here? No. So you gotta stay. You gotta deal with whatever the drama is. And then just when you're like, all right, smoke is settled. If the hospital is burning down and the smoke is now settled, you gotta write War and Peace as to what just happened. So who knows how long that's gonna take you. So by the time you get out of the hospital, it could be hours later. And if we just flip that little scenario into the evening hours, when you're at 11 and a half hours and all you can think of is your bed, you've got your non-dominant hand propping your eyelids open so you can see your patient and see the computer and see what you're writing down and see your cup of coffee. And then the shit hits the fan. Well, that's a real shit show, because then you need both hands to deal with whatever the drama is, including that hand that was holding your eyelids open. You gotta throw some water on your face, steal that ice pack that was meant for the patient, and slap yourself in the face a few times with that, down that remaining cold coffee that's sitting next to you that used to be hot, and do a few jumping jacks and push-ups, and then try to deal with whatever this shit is, and deal with the War and Peace again, and then you can get to go home and hopefully sleep. But just so you know, on a good day, you get 4 hours less than your 8 to 4, 9 to 5, 7 to 3 colleagues to recoup and recharge. And if you left the hospital late, that's even less before the next 12-hour shift comes on in. That's that. And then just to add a little bit of a color, right? This is just the skeleton for you. Let's add a little bit of muscle and tissue for you. All right, that was a terrible analogy. Let me just give you the lowdown, okay? So that's what inevitably happens to you several times in any given 2-week period of time, the whole 11 and a half hour drama. The rest of your day is a lot like, okay, I'm here. Let's get after it. And then, all right, so you spend your time, you're running from room to room. These rooms, just so you know, might be about a mile from each other because there's no rhyme or reason. Especially if you're not in an ICU setting, there's really no rhyme or reason. So you could be running down the hall. You finally get to the hall, and then you're like, oh, shit, I forgot something at the other end of the hall. So you got to run back to the other end of the hall, and then just as you get whatever you forgot, somebody screams down the hall, hey, your patient's not doing so well. I think they might be dead. And then you're like, oh, shit. So you got to run back down the hall with whatever it is that you meant to get, but still left wherever you wanted to find it. And then you got to deal with that. And then you're like, oh, God, what's happening with the rest of my patients that I haven't seen? Well, this patient's been dying. So you go in, you push and pull them, you roll and clean them, and, they might be 16 times heavier than you, and then you're gonna do your War and Peace for patient number 1, type your War and Peace for patient number 2, scribble your War and Peace for patient number 3. Meanwhile, you got this fucking cell phone or pager or whatever they're giving you these days ringing incessantly because, it says your patient has a lethal arrhythmia. Nope, they're just moving their arm. And they say, you've got this admission coming. And you're like, oh, well, my patient that was supposed to go home didn't leave the hospital, so are we admitting the patient on the floor or in the broom cupboard? What's going on? And then you're like, oh, I haven't had lunch. And your charge is like, oh, well, the person who was supposed to give you lunch is sick today, so good luck having lunch. And then you're like, why do I have pain? And you're like, oh, I haven't gone to the bathroom in 7 years. And then, just when you think that's all fine and dandy, the hospital starts burning down again. Or they're like, oh, there's some drama in the ER. We have to admit 7 people right now. And I know you've already got 7 people, but hey, we all got to do our share. So that's kind of your day, and then insert in there that 11 and a half hour drama that we just talked about. Make sure you understand why you want to be a nurse. All right, I'm going away now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. You've been a very attentive audience to work towards. Take care. Hopefully this didn't discourage you too much. Just giving you a little bit of the unadulterated truth, which is what you can expect on this podcast. If you are going to work, going to school, whatever it is you're doing, hopefully you're a little less dim.